So I have no idea what exactly it was that we saw that night.
And this is why we don't hike at night. No, this is a good one though. Listen, watch.
Okay, so I have no idea what exactly it was that we saw that night. My friends and I go camping a lot, and our favorite place is the Red River Gorge here in eastern Kentucky. It's the closest place to where I live where you can see the Milky Way pretty much every single night. Our first experiences night hiking, we would go to trails that we knew well and were frequently used during the day. Ones with lots of fences and gazebo resting places like the Natural Bridge, which is like a 2 to 4 mile hike uphill, just depending on your starting point. Hiking on this trail at night is not allowed, but it's the woods, and I've never been one to care much about closing times for the literal outside. This night was weird to begin with. Almost as soon as we got going on the hike, the clouds started taking over, and we started to get the impression that we were going stargazing at pretty much nothing. But we went anyways, just in case it cleared out by the time we got up to the top, because you just never know with Kentucky weather. In the beginning, it was just the normal paranoia that was keeping us so stressed and quiet. You know you've reached the bottom of the bridge when you see a giant wall of limestone. It's after hours at this point, so no skylift rides have gone on for hours. And the Rangers had already done their sweep and left right before we got out of the car and headed up. I guess I have to make these points because this is what I was thinking to myself when, like, out of nowhere, a girl appeared with a headlamp. And she begins to walk down the trail that we're looking out at. She was in a sundress and flip-flops. And while this is a fairly easy hike, it wouldn't be easy with no water or no real shoes, especially after dark. Her light was bright, and when she reached to where the trail turned down to where we were sitting, she just stopped. She just stood there straight on. She was just sitting there staring at all of us, and I had to bring like my arm up to shield my eyes from the light because it was so bright. And it was shining like directly in my eyes. She didn't turn away from our lights at all or even seem to be bothered that she had 6 LED lamps shining right in her eyes. I said hello, and she kind of replied, but with like a pause between every single word, something like, "Hello, how are you?" I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And she took even longer pauses, and she was like, "Oh, I'm fine." She then just stood there with her hands to her side and just staring at us. Her light made it impossible to see her face, and I had my hand up the entire time because her light was just so bright. Until finally she just turned and slowly walked down the trail part that we had just came up from. She got to a part where the trail like turned and we could see her light like just stopped there for a minute until she turned and the light faded out of sight. After that, we waited a little while before we headed on up. I made comments about how weird that just was, and everybody just made it out to me being always afraid. So we got up after a bit and we started back up to the top. We laid down and we tried to stargaze, but the clouds were even thicker at this time and we were all miserably hot. We could hear voices at times, and my friend kept checking for the people that we heard. We saw a flashlight and we never saw anyone attached to it. And then we heard like a bird call, but it wasn't like a real bird noise. It was like some person doing bird calls, like rhythmic and not really natural at all. I was convinced that we weren't alone and hadn't been alone, but I'm the most easily spooked. I asked to leave whenever they were ready, and they were all ready to leave right then and there, which kind of scared me too. You know, just knowing that they're all just as afraid as I am at this point. We began going back downhill the same way that we came up, but it felt like it was taking so long. We were moving steady and quick, and it was all downhill, but it felt like we were making no grounds at all. It's hard to explain, but at one point I even said this feels much longer than the way up, and they all agreed. Okay, so now we're walking in like a semi-flattish area, at least compared to the downhill that we had been doing. The handrail or the wooden fence or whatever it is all on the left side of us. We're all walking in a row when all of a sudden my friend says, "What's that?" But the question was more of like an alert, so I moved my headlamp in that direction and I don't see anything at first. At the same time, all 6 of our lights start to shine and like reflect off of a light gray creature. It's bent in a crouching position, sitting on its right leg, and it starts to turn towards us. It starts to stand up, but my mind is like racing at this point. It almost looks human, but it's too big. It's tall and thin, and it was so light gray that it was almost white, and its skin almost resembled dolphin skin. Like, it has a shine to it, like it reflects in the light when our headlamps hit it. It's gradually coming to a full standing position in front of us. Its head is long and its eyes are in like a human position on the front of its face, like not like an animal, like on the side of its face. I couldn't see any other facial features, almost just big empty holes or pits for its eyes. Its arms hung down low by its knees, and its hands seemed to be long too. I'm gonna guess it stood at like 9 feet or so tall, and it was right there in front of us. It had no hair, like at all. And it had a big head. Like, I couldn't process what I was seeing. I was just frozen and I felt my friend hitting me, just saying, run, run, run. I start to understand that we have to get away from this thing, and that's when it pivots and runs to the right, going backwards along the trail so it can get around the barrier and get on the trail behind us. We took off running down the trail, knowing in our minds that that thing took off a lot faster than we did. Didn't talk at all because when we tried, it felt like we were going to get caught. We kept running just as fast as we could, but some areas were just so steep. It never felt like we were out of the sight of this creature, not even for a second. As we made it to the trailhead with the gravel, we could hear something crashing down in the forest beside us. We all just ran as fast as we could and jumped in the car, and we drove down the road just as fast as we could until we got to the main road, and then the sky cleared up, and then the stars came out.
Obviously an alien in the woods again, not only because of the way that it looked, but because number one, they were saying how it felt like it took so much longer to go back. And in many cases, most cases, when aliens are around, I don't know if it's the beings themselves or the craft that they're in, but when they're around, there are definitely time losses or time slows down, sound stops, things like that. And number two, the fact that she said that as soon as they left, the stars came out and they hadn't been out the entire time. I'm wondering if that also had something to do with the craft. Maybe the craft was covering the stars, and maybe that little being was running back to the craft. I don't know, but absolutely an alien, right? Right, guys? My question is the girl in the beginning, was that an alien being in disguise, or did she just see something? Had she just seen an alien as well? And now she was coming back and she saw these other people. And because of the flashlights, maybe she couldn't see exactly who they were and that they were actual human beings. Maybe she just saw silhouettes and she was frozen thinking that they were more alien beings. That's what I think about the girl. What do you guys think? Please let me know in the comments. I need to know.